Sort of things around here. So that's to ladies and gentlemen, Shri KT Ramarao Garu, the Honorable Minister, Government of Telangana.
He just made me sound like a student here, but thank you very much. In fact, I would love to go back to school, by the way, Dean, provided you give me a seat here. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, warm welcome to all of you to Deccan Dialogue. It's not very often that we see the KMCA auditorium full on a Sunday morning, so Dean must have done something, either offered you good lunch or I don't know, whatever it is. Are you actually offering lunch right after this? I hope you are. Right. Thank you for making sure that Deccan Dialogue, in the presence of General V.K. Singh, who as a man, not as a minister but as an individual, I admire very much. General, it's always a pleasure to see you, always a pleasure to meet you. And I was so very much looking forward to the warm, tough handshake that you always offer when we meet. Once a military man, always a military man, I guess. So thank you very much. Srini Raju, who's a friend and also a member of the executive board here. Thank you, Srini, for sharing your thoughts. I see many friends, many diplomats, many consul generals and many others that I interact with in various forums. So good to see you all. Again, thanks for making yourself present here on a Sunday morning. I have very few points, in fact. One of the things I wanted to talk about is how Ministry of External Affairs has been leading from the front with respect to engaging various stakeholders, say in Delhi or in Mumbai. Delhi we have the Raisina dialogue, the capital that it is, and with all diplomats being present in Delhi, I think it's only natural that you have a sustained and an ongoing dialogue with various missions. In Bombay as well, being the commercial capital of India, I think you have a Gateway of India dialogue, which I believe also has been going on really well. Now, sir, I would like to request you, General Singh, Minister Sir, that I want to remind you and I also want to request you. So Hyderabad is where north meets the south. We are neither north of India nor south of India. I would like to believe that we are central. We are that veritable melting pot, that point of confluence where different cultures, different religions, different regions, different languages, everything kind of meets here. So I think it's only natural that Deccan Dialogue, with your blessing of course and with MEA's initiative and with Vishnu's enthusiasm, had to happen here. But I would request you, sir, kindly to bless this, make this official and make this ongoing and an annual dialogue, or if possible a semi-annual dialogue, so that we can have more and more interaction with various stakeholders from across the world as well. Now, Hyderabad also has a lot of other natural advantages. As is mentioned in Deccan Dialogue, the very name, this is the Deccan Plateau, which is in fact, for many of you who may already be aware, this is one of the most stable regions in the world in terms of seismology, in terms of seismological stabilities. So that way, in fact, sir, it makes a lot of sense also from a trade and commerce perspective also to make Hyderabad host city for such dialogue, because we are shielded from all natural forces. We don't have earthquakes, we don't have tsunamis or cyclones or typhoons or typically the things that tend to disrupt such large events. So we have none of those. So therefore also all the more reason for you to engage with Hyderabad in this dialogue, sir. Now coming to the topic that is being discussed, economic diplomacy. I personally believe economics and diplomacy are inseparable in today's world. You cannot literally separate them and look at them as separate entities. Economics, diplomacy, I think go hand in hand. Gone are the days when we had diplomacy of various kinds. I think the only diplomacy the world wants and needs and understands today. I mean, the reason why I say this is because right from our Chief Minister Shri KCR here, to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, to the President of the United States Donald Trump, I think everybody's singular focus has been on creation of jobs and creation of employment. I think that is the biggest challenge that governments across the world face today. So having said that, how do you then ensure that you create and sustain employment creation in a methodical fashion? I think the only way forward is economic diplomacy. The only way forward is trade and commerce opportunities. Increased engagement between various nations, depending of course on your priorities, depending of course on your ability and the resources that are also at your disposal. I must thank Minister for External Affairs, Minister of State for External Affairs, General Singh, and also his senior colleague, Madam Sushma Swaraj, for honestly making the missions, Indian embassies across the world super duper active in terms of just promoting the trade and commerce opportunities. I have traveled as part of my job as Minister for Industry and Commerce, Government of Telangana, to many countries in the last 4 years. And I must tell you, and I can tell you with a lot of confidence, that today I think our missions across the world have been doing a stellar job in terms of just engaging with various states in India, in terms of promoting trade and commerce opportunities, in terms of being that amazing and wonderful gateway, presenting the various opportunities that a diverse country like India offers. So my compliments to you, General Singh, and to the Ministry of External Affairs headed by you and Madam Sushma Swaraj for ensuring that our missions are fully equipped and fully geared up to deal with all kinds of trade and commerce opportunities that emanate from engagements. The one thing I wanted to point out to many of my friends here, especially the diplomats from, Andrew's here from UK, and I also see other friends from various countries. I wanted to point out one thing. A lot of times when a diplomat who's not, or who's familiar with India but not fully well versed with India, the typical questions that you would get when you get a first posting in India or when you're first sent to India is, India still has, across the world, thanks largely to, I guess, Hollywood movies and possibly a little bit due to Bollywood movies as well, there is a very stereotypical image of India in many parts of the world, even as we speak. India is in some parts of the world still treated as the land of snake charmers and, a land where you still have elephants and cattle, walking the streets, which is not really far away from reality, but, we have many other things to offer also. Let me put it that way. We do have many things to offer. We as a country, in fact, have many things to offer to the world, not just for our countrymen. The reason why I say this is because when you look at India as a country, when you look at India as one entity, which is a common fallacy, a lot of people, especially when they talk about India for the first time, make. I would say it's incorrect. I would say it is something that you have to correct as soon as you step in, because India is a very complex, very diverse, very heterogeneous entity. India, in fact, in my opinion, if you ask me, is in fact United States of India. India is a continent, not a country. A lot of times, a lot of diplomats make this oversimplified comparison between China and India. In fact, even Srini was alluding to the economic diplomacy, the inherent strengths of engagement, of raw materials, of supply, of free trade agreements, and a bunch of things, and he also referred to China. China is very different from India. China is a country, China is a fairly homogeneous, I wouldn't say it's completely homogeneous, but it's a fairly homogeneous country compared to India. But India, on the other hand, is a very complicated, is a very different country. The reason why I say this is because we have General V.K. Singh, who is a Minister of State, who is an Indian. I am an Indian too. My name is KT Ramarao. I'm a minister in the state of Telangana. But the language the two Indians on the platform here speak at home are as different from each other as are English and possibly Korean. Because he speaks Hindi, I speak Telugu, which have no connection, which have no similarity to each other. Point I'm trying to make is, in India, everything changes every 200 kilometers. The language, the dialect, the culture, the cuisine, the eating habits, the opportunities, just the personalities, etc. changes every few hundred kilometers. Therefore, it is important for foreign diplomats, if you want to get a hang of India, if you really want to understand India, first thing, of course, you have to travel like Andrew, who keeps traveling more than I do. I'm not complaining. Second thing, I think, what you ought to be doing is, stop looking at India through the prism of a World Bank report, or stop looking at India through the prism of a consultant's report. These are very, the reports that you look at, especially if you take one of the top 5, consulting firms in the world and look at various opportunities within India. They want to paint India with a fairly broad brush. I would definitely advise you against it, because each state in India is very different from another. In fact, even if you look at India as a country and the states that India has, we have a state called Uttar Pradesh, which has a population of 22 crores, translating to 220 million people, if it were a separate entity and a separate country, would be the 6th largest administrative unit in the world. And we also have another state called Goa, which I am very sure many of you are very familiar, which is a very, very small state, possibly a few million people. The point I'm trying to make is, India is a country which is extremely diverse. India is a country which has got disparities, not just in terms of its the various other things I mentioned, but also in terms of size of the states. I think it's extremely important from a diplomacy perspective, from economic diplomacy perspective, for you to engage not just with India at Delhi's level. I think it's equally important for you to engage with India at the level of the state, India being a federal structure, where, of course, Delhi decides many, many things, but I think states are empowered to do a lot more things today, especially when it comes to economics and trade and commerce opportunities. The reason why, again, I say this, for instance, India ranks 100th, I believe, after, in fact, this union government has come in. We jumped 30 spots on the world EODB rankings, the ease of doing business rankings. We are still 100. We still have a long way to cover. But if you look at various states within India, a state like Telangana, for instance, we in fact have transcended, have broken many stereotypes, have brought in many policy reforms, have brought in many business reforms, have ushered in many, many new policies which possibly make us one of the most competitive. If we were to be rated as an entity separately, we would be possibly one of the top destinations on ease of doing business, not just in India, but in the world as well. In fact, within India, thank you. Within India, in fact, I'm happy to share with you, consistently a second year in a row, we are number 2 among all the states on a joint ranking given by World Bank and the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. The reason why I say this, again, the reason why I request all diplomats to engage with states is because each state has its own inherent strengths. Each state has its own opportunities, has its own challenges, of course. It has its own way of working in terms of ensuring that business gets done in a much, much easy fashion. So my request to the diplomats is to, of course, engage with states, not just confine yourself to a dialogue with Delhi. That's why Raisina dialogue is as important as Deccan dialogue, I believe. And my request to General Singh is that, sir, in fact, there was a very peculiar instance of us as a state wanting to promote trade and commerce opportunities, with, of course, under the larger rubric of Ministry of External Affairs, under the larger rubric of India. There was a news report about 2 years ago, I think about a year ago, in fact, let me correct myself, in a prominent newspaper here saying Telangana is thinking of creating its own foreign affairs. Strangely, I mean, to come to think of it, to even report, to even write of something like that is a travesty, but unfortunately, we live in a democracy, so therefore people get away with anything they write. What happened as a result is, even before I could jump in, even before I could say, how could I do it, or how can a state even think of something like that? All we were trying to do is create a vehicle like Invest India, which Government of India has created, in a quasi-government mode, and promote more trade and commerce opportunities. We wanted to create a vehicle, a special purpose vehicle called Invest Telangana, in about 6 different countries across the world, and create a state desk so that we can actually promote a bilateral trade in a much more robust fashion. As soon as this newspaper wrote about how Telangana has these dreams of launching its own foreign affairs ministry, of which apparently I was going to be the minister, immediately I got a letter from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs, saying, you cannot do this as a state. Now, I didn't know how to react to it because it was purely based on a newspaper report. So my request to you, General Singh, is, sir, I think we all understand, we all understand each other very well. We have to also realize that states which are wanting to, which are wanting to literally, leapfrog, not leapfrog, in fact, pole vault, and take India a couple of notches ahead in terms of the employment opportunities, in terms of the great opportunities this country presents, have to be supported, have to be, in fact, guided properly, and not not I wouldn't say stifled, but possibly held back. My request, sir, is if you can talk within your ministry, talk to the various officials within the ministry, to also create a platform so that even states can be given an opportunity to engage with various nations, various opportunities across the world, so that we can push forward very, very aggressively. That will be a huge help to us as well. And if Ministry of External Affairs also, as part of this Deccan Dialogue, I'm sure after the deliberations today, you'll have a lot of actionable points. One of the things I wanted to point out, sir, is, in fact, Ministry of External Affairs, if you can take up, a resource mapping kind of an exercise, where you can map the resources within a state. For example, Telangana is a landlocked state, whereas my sister state, Andhra Pradesh, has a huge coastline. Now, our strengths are very different. We are very, very urban in terms of our population. We are 42% urban as a state, whereas Andhra, again, is a fairly predominantly rural state. So if you are able to make a resource mapping at the Ministry of External Affairs level, and also possibly do an analysis of the strengths of a state. For example, the state of Telangana and the city of Hyderabad is the life sciences capital of India. Is also a leading player on information technology. Our aerospace and defense industry is shaping up very, very well. Our automobile, food processing sectors, our logistics sector are also shaping up really well. So if you're able to map our strengths and then possibly map them across the world to various countries and various missions and say these are the states that you could possibly engage with, and these are the states possibly who you should have a dialogue with, and you should continue the conversation. I think end of the day we all realize, and at the end of the day we all agree, stronger the states, stronger our country will be. So I think Deccan Dialogue today is a great initiative, sir. Thank you very much. And I do hope that you will bless this, you will formalize this, and you will make it an ongoing exercise, just like the exercise in Delhi. And we'd love to see you more often in Hyderabad, sir. Thank you very much. Have a great Sunday.
వీడియో నచ్చిందా? అయితే ఓ లైక్ వేసుకోండి, లేదంటే ఓ కామెంట్ చేయండి. ఎప్పటికప్పుడు మా వీడియోస్ చూడాలంటే సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేసుకోండి.